seeing sort of how the book came about, and I was very interested in that. So I kind of want to know how long has this book been in you? How did it
Ooh.
come about? And is this the book that you wanted to read but couldn't find?
It is very much the book that I wanted to read but couldn't find. I'll start with that,
Mhm.
because that's just a yes. I was looking for this book, and so I wrote it so that
Mhm.
now it exists. And I don't know if this is totally like, I mean, I have now, of course, read the finished book,
Mhm.
and it's very satisfying. I'm like, this is great. This is what I was hoping to do. Um, the book came about. I mean, so yeah, how long was the book in me? I think that, well, I mean, so from the time that I started to think about this set of issues, these questions around Marxism and ethics, I think I first got interested in that in around 2003. I mean, pretty
Mhm.
much right at the time of the U.S. invading Iraq and the time that I was getting involved in activism. So, uh, that's a good 20 years, really, of having this question and seeking for an answer. But the question is, I mean, it's a great question because uh, the book in its current form, the way
Mhm.
that it is completed, I think maybe within the last 5 years was I the scholar who could produce that.
Mhm.
So I wrote a dissertation on this topic. And which I still like, which, most people, of course, you write a dissertation and it's terrible, you put it away. Um, I still operate out of a general theoretical framework that I developed at that point.
Mhm.
But the book, in its finished form, uh, does a lot of work to connect what might seem to some a fairly niche question to some broader questions about both the academy and then also just the world, the sort of state of humanity, of political life on the planet, and what kinds of things we need to do in order to survive, let alone actually thrive and flourish. And I think it's probably within the last 5 or 6 years that it took maturity to
Mhm.
really be able to write that book.
I have
Awesome.
a follow up question I kind of want to add as well.
Mhm.
When you talk about some of the things that were the impetus that kind of got you here in terms of the book, you mentioned some of the geopolitical realities that we were in
Mhm.
during the period of time, the climate change, the changes in the geostrategic purview of American power overall, the war on terror, things of that nature. One of the things that struck me was that you never mentioned the Bernie Sanders campaign as one of the actual
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
that actually brought forth the interest in Marxism. And I was
Hmm.
wondering, was that because you were not interested in the Sanders campaign, or you found
Hmm.
it not international enough in scope to be
Hmm.
one of the contributors to the reason for this burgeoning interest in Marxism? Because I think that
Hmm.
if Sanders had not stated that he was a socialist, that interest might have diminished somewhat. I think that him publicly coming out as a socialist forces Marxism on the table in a way that it might not have been forced if otherwise. So I'd like you to answer that if possible in terms of what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's right. There's one reference in the book. There's a place where I talk about how attitudes towards Marxism have shifted and shifted quite a bit since the mid 2000s, when it was still mostly considered an incredibly niche and outdated way of thinking about the world. And I think you're absolutely right that the Sanders campaign was a part of that. I was not involved in the Sanders campaign. By 2004, at the time that I voted for Kerry, I knew that was the last time I was going to do that, and I never participated in any kind of democratic campaign, or so it just wasn't part of my story.
Have you been in DC this whole time too?
I've been at GW in DC since 2015.
But you weren't in the DC area when you said F the electoral system.
Yeah. Sorry, when I said
F the electoral system.
I was in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the Sanders campaign just wasn't part of my story, although I absolutely agree with you that it had this this social and cultural effect of making it cool, right, to think about socialism again. And of course, you see the reverberations of that with people who are involved in the campaign often continuing to do really good left-wing work. I saw in the chat somebody mentioned my Marx bust. So I just want to see if I could show it to the camera somehow. There's Marx. It's actually a piggy bank, and it says Das Kapital on the
That's actually very cool.
Thank you.
I mean, I made the thumbnail picture of you.
I noticed that, and I love it. I saw that. I was like, yes.
I was like, well, this woman's very serious about this.
Right.